Hi, everybody. Deborah Prinzing here with the Slow Flowers Show. And I'm so happy that you're joining me today because we have a fabulous guest. I'm calling this Willows Week on the Slow Flowers Show. And I'm delighted to introduce Alana Karam of Willamette Willows. Hi, Alana.
Hi, so
Thanks so
glad to
much.
be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here too. It's so great to see you in your studio space. What did you say your son-in-law calls that space?
He called it my castle apothecary room,
Well, when it's sort
which
of
I thought
different.
was great. I just
Yeah.
I went with that.
Yeah, like guys get man caves, you get the castle
That's
apothecary
that's
room.
right. That's right.
I love it. Well, we've been discussing doing this podcast for months. And when I was in Eugene, Oregon to speak at the local home and garden show in October, I invited myself over for a quick hello so we could meet face to face. And you were so sweet. You jumped in the golf cart or ATV with my friend Lamanda and me and took us down into the fields. And you explained that the willows weren't quite ready for prime time, but they are now. Is this the
There
season now?
we're getting into it. Yes, the different varieties will drop their leaves at a little bit different times, and so some of them are completely ready to go, could be harvested now, and some are still hanging on. So we wait as long as we can. Michael is really on go, dying to get out there and start harvesting, but we try to hold off as long as we can.
Before we get into all the nuts and bolts of growing willow, can you just give us a little bit of a snapshot of Willamette? Is it willow or willows plural?
Willows.
Okay, so Willamette willows. Um, this is a genus specific business, and I think that's really interesting at this time of when people try to be all things to all people. You're like, no, we're willow for all people. So tell us a little bit about the farm and how it's structured and where it is and the scale and all of that.
Well, the we operate out of our home property. It's a smallish farm. The property is about 50 acres, but it was an old horse property, and there's a producing hay field. So there's a lot of pasture and hay field, but then the houses were right at the tip of the Willamette Valley, and so the foothills, go up on our side, and then right across the valley, we can see the foothills going up on the other side. So it's a beautiful
It
view. But
is.
our house is up on the hill, and then we have some woods behind us, and a pretty little small little hilly meadow as well. But we grow the willow down in the pasture area. So we're in a perfect climate for growing willow, and you can grow willow just about anywhere. Willow is found, there are thousands of varieties, and it's found from zone 2 to 9, and probably on the edges of even more than that. But our really wet winter just makes it great, perfect for willow, easy to grow willow. We don't have to water much, if at all. Um, and we have an area that we always called the Badlands because it wasn't good for anything. It was too wet to grow hay. The animals didn't like it. It just seemed like just wasted, no man's land. And that is the perfect spot for growing willow,
Wow.
because it holds water in the wintertime, which is fine. You don't
Mhm.
want willow to be in standing water all year round, but it holds water in the wintertime, and then it doesn't completely dry up until just about the end of the summer when the rain is starting again.
Mm.
So that just makes it really easy for us to grow the willow and not have to worry about irrigation.
That's
Um,
that's a huge point. I mean, this whole idea coming out of horticulture for myself, right plant, right place is sort of the admonition that people are given, and so many flower farmers are trying to grow crops that just require so much extra input to succeed. And it sounds like you're working with Mother Nature to grow willow where it wants to be.
yeah, yeah, we really are. And like I said, you can grow it anywhere. Um, and a smaller amount of willow that you have to water is fine.
Yeah.
But we have about an acre now planted. So that's about, we plant really closely. So we've got about 12,000 plants in that space now.
Gosh, it's amazing.
And we just tarped another acre to replant or to propagate more in the next couple of months. And so with that much growing,
It's crazy.
it's nice to have ideal conditions and
Uh,
not have to, not have to fight it at all.
oh, yeah, and it is a beautiful valley. I mean, you just where your house is situated, you're overlooking the lower fields, and then you're looking across to the mountains or the mountain range on the other side of the valley. It's just
Yeah.
it's idyllic. You're close to Eugene, Oregon, but definitely in the country, like half an hour away, right?
Yes, we think it's perfect. We're close enough to get into the city for anything we need, but also, perfectly able to hide out and just stay in the country like we like to do.
Be willow hermits.
Yes.
Well, you mentioned that there's like, this huge volume of varieties. I think you said 1,000, but I'm not quite sure if I'm mischaracterizing that.
Yeah.
How many cultivars are you growing, or is this it, or are you going to keep exploring and experimenting with new ones?
That's a good question. We're upwards of 50 now, and we keep saying, we go back and forth. We're like, oh no, we have enough. We've got all the bases covered. We don't need any more. And then we'll see or, hear another one mentioned and like, yeah, but we have room. Let's go ahead. So I suspect that we will probably keep adding forever. And some, we're still getting a feel for what is really, really happy here and what best suits the purposes that we're growing it for. So we might have 10 varieties that all technically can be used for one purpose like basketry, but we're finding that one is just producing exactly what we want. So we'll propagate a lot more of that and then probably keep the others just for, if somebody wants that one or just kind of like like a specimen garden of
Mm-hmm.
different things. So that
Mm-hmm.
we know the varieties and how they
Yeah,
behave. And
that makes sense. Then you evaluate how it performs and how. I think the reason people want different varieties is for the color of the stem. Is that correct?
yes, that's one reason. For basketry, there are the go-to varieties that are just great all-purpose basketry willows, and they're generally, in the range of browns. And then there are several varieties that are harder to work with, but have those beautiful red and orange colors, and those can be used for accents. So,
Mm-hmm.
in that case, we have all of those. And then for florals, like we have in the curly willows, we have dart snake, which is a green brown, which I recommend for neutrals in arrangements. And then we have two reddish oranges, sunny twist and scarlet curls. And then this year we've had it for a couple of years, but have available for cuttings this year is the really red, we're calling it, because we're not sure what it actually is, but it doesn't really have as much of that orange undertone. It is more of a true Christmassy red. So yeah, it's nice to have in the curlies different color ranges for different purposes.
Yeah.
And then in the pussy willows, they have different looks. There's Corso, which has kind of a thick, beefy, fuzzy stem and a kind of a really prominent catkin. And that has a totally different look from Mount Osso. That's the pink one that everybody loves. That's a lot more delicate and pink as opposed to white. So and they have different bloom times too.
Yeah.
So if you have several varieties of pussy willow, then one might start blooming in December. Um, Winter Glory is very early bloomer, and then later and later and later. So you could have catkins all the way through April,
Wow.
and different ones with different looks, different feels, a different vibe.
I really love how fluent you are in the language of willows, because it is, you're helping me understand that there's at least three major kind of genre or categories. There's the basketry selections, the curly willow selections, and then the pussy willow selections. And within each of those, you've mentioned many different favorites of yours. They must have different customers. Can you talk a little bit about who is who is contacting you to buy each of these distinct types of willow,
Um, oh
or
gosh.
who you're marketing to? I guess I know you handle a lot of the marketing.
Well, yeah, there are the flower farmers and the basket weavers, and there's even more than that. Willow is just, it's a real rabbit hole. Amazing how many things you can do with it. You know, the beefier varieties are good for trellises and
Mm,
obelisks, and
mhm.
you can weave peony cages out of them, and edging for garden beds. That's just
Oh, right.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So there's, you know, all of the garden structures, and we've been working with some people recently on some stream bank restoration projects,
Hmm.
and Willow is great for that too, because the root system, you know, the really robust root system will hold in the earth, and a lot of, especially government projects, don't want to use any artificial materials,
Mm.
and so that's where Willow
It's a
comes in for that.
natural retaining
Yeah,
properties. Yeah.
yeah. So I have so many different markets, and I can, you know, sometimes feel like I'm spread a little thin, because I like to really get in there and understand the use, the customer, and what they need, and not just, you know, sell them product, because we do find a lot of times people kind of know what they need, but not completely, and so it's really helpful for us to be able to answer the questions that they don't even know they should be
Mhm.
asking.
Mhm.
And to that end, I've gotten really active in the I went to the Northwest conference of the AS. I always have to
ASCFG.
think
Yeah.
about the order of the letters, the
Yeah.
ASFCG.
When it was up
And
in Bellingham, Washington,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah, in Bellingham. And I'm on, you know, in lots of Facebook groups for flower farmers, so that I can, you know, really understand the needs and the issues and the problems. And then I went to Tear Up Basketry Fest in England this summer, um, to get more involved in the basketry side of it, and, you know, learn to weave, and so, you know, so that I understand
Yeah.
the needs of the basket weaver, and the different varieties, and the characteristics that we're looking for, and all of those things. But it makes it fun, because I
Yeah.
think that I'm a generalist, not a specialist, and I get kind of bored with being too focused in on one thing. So it's really interesting to have the different markets and interact a lot with all of those different people with different
Wow.
needs,
That's
and
cool.
be involved in their projects.
Yeah. Well, I think I might pull up your website while we're chatting, just so I can show people. Is that okay? Or
Sure.
here's the homepage of you and a cute guy and a cute dog. And you're pretty cute too.
That's that's Michael, and my right-hand man, and Fig, my right-hand dog.
Oh, I love it. So this is a great resource for people who maybe aren't too familiar with how willow grows or how it looks when it's mature. Like this photo on the right is crazy, and I love this because people can see the planting area you were just discussing. Oh my gosh, that pussy willow is massive. Um, why don't you just tell us a little bit about how the product is when you sell it, and I'll pop up your shop.
Well, the majority of our sales right now are cuttings for planting. So after the willow is when the willow is dormant, we cut the harvest everything to the ground, and then we cut we willow cuttings are typically 11 to 11 to 12 inches. We like to sell longer ones just to give a little bit better chance of healthy growth. And quite honestly, I bought 14-inch bags, and Michael can't stand to leave a space in the bags. So we start out. We
So
start the beginning of the season with 12-inch cuttings, and then Michael gets a little bit longer, and and pretty soon I'm having to put them on the diagonal so they'll fit in the bag at
Oh,
all.
how funny. You're so generous.
But yeah, so they're just bare cuttings, and you just stick them in the ground. And I don't know if I'm jumping ahead with this,
No,
but
this is great. They, I mean, like,
but
they literally don't need to be potted up per
they
se.
do not. And I think you and I talked a little bit when you were here about how I think that flower farmers, especially who grow annuals, are so used to everything being so hard that they just do not believe me when I say just poke the stick in the ground. And I frequently see pictures, or people will send me pictures of their cuttings, in jars on their countertop, all with all the big, beautiful roots. And it kind of pains me because then you have to dig a hole and
Right. Oh my
to not
gosh.
damage the roots when you're planting them, and you're just making it. I'm like, stop it. Just stop it. Just
But
poke it in the ground. You're making it so much more difficult than it has to be. I
is
actually
it
got a message from a flower farmer this morning saying that her cuttings didn't take, and I asked her if she thought she knew what was wrong, or if she wanted some guidance, because she wanted to try again. And she said, well, I rooted them, and I think I waited too long. And I'm like, yeah, don't do that. Really, just poke it in the ground.
is that why you have this section called Willow Planting Info for Type A personalities? Oh my
Well,
gosh.
some people like the quick and easy version and just don't have time. And the quick and easy version is poke it in the ground, water it well, and don't let anything eat it. And that
Mm.
is really all you need to know. But if you want to get into the nitty gritty and understand a little bit more about it, then there's for the type A personalities.
When should I plant? Where should I plant? How do I plant? Will willow grow where I live? So you've got, I mean, you've covered a lot of this just in our conversation, but for those who want to sort of do a little bit of advanced research, visit the Willamette Willows website. You're going to get a lot before you, contact Elena and ask her to walk you through it.
All of the basic planting information is there, and I am always happy to answer questions.
That's great.
Email, message
Yeah.
me from the website, whatever.
So, Elena, you talked about selling these 12 to 14 inch, they're like chopsticks, right? They're just like twigs, right? And
They are.
okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. And how do people buy them? Like in a bundle of 10, or does it depend on the variety?
We sell bundles of
Okay.
6.
Okay.
Every variety is bundles of 6. Yeah. And
Which means 6 big plants eventually, because they're huge when they are mature, right?
yes.
It's crazy,
Yes.
the ones I saw on
So
your farm.
right. So it's I've talked about how it's so easy to grow. It's also inexpensive
Hmm.
because yes, from a cutting you get a huge plant
Yeah.
after a couple of it's a perennial, and it behaves
Mhm.
like a perennial. The first year is mostly focused on the roots, and you will not see a whole lot going on above ground. They'll look just kind of spindly.
Yeah.
Right, you'll get 3 or 4 or 5 rods, kind of skinny maybe. And you might think you're doing something wrong, and you're not. There's a lot
Wow.
going on under the
Mhm.
ground. And then
Mhm.
and you should cut it to the ground, although that's a little bit controversial, but most willow growers agree after the first year, cut it to the ground. And then in the second year, it will be a lot more robust above ground, but it really settles in the third year. And then going forward from the third year to, your willow plant can live for 20 years or longer.
Wow.
So you
Wow.
poked a stick in the ground, and for 20 years, you have a large producing plant. You'll get from most varieties 20 to 40 or more stems per plant every year. And whether or not you use the willow that year, or need all of it, you should always cut it all to the ground because it will quickly grow back, and all of the best stems are on new growth.
Oh, that's great
So, and
advice.
especially
Yeah.
in the curly willow, the best
Mm,
color is on the new growth. So cut it to the
hmm
ground no matter what, even if you throw it on the compost pile.
hmm
Just cut it to the ground every year.
It must
And
you must hate putting your cuttings on the compost pile. I'm wondering if you have other uses for them.
I don't really ever put any willow on the compost pile. I have
I'm not
lots of
surprised.
uses. I actually made fire starter bundles with most of what we cut off when we were doing cuttings. And I just gather up some curly willow, some pussy willow, some just all a bunch of it and tie it with some twine. And I have a pretty little stack next to my fireplace. But after a year, it makes great kindling. And that
Wow.
is actually another thing that research is being done on, is using willow for biofuel. It's
Oh
just
my
it's
gosh.
the different things that willow is used for are just endless.
Mm.
But yeah, and we've just started selling willow wreaths for bunny treats. So yes, it's used for fodder. People feed it to sheep. And even the little bitty bits that I cut off when I'm weaving or making cuttings, I'll keep those, save those in a bucket and use those for fire starter also.
Wow. I watched your Instagram feed this past week, and you were showing some really great techniques for making wreaths.
Mhm.
And I did not realize are those for the bunny treats or are those for like your front door?
Those are just wreath bases for
Okay.
either standalone because the colors are beautiful, or to, attach greenery and make Christmas wreaths
Okay.
and things. Yeah. So that's a great biodegradable option,
Yeah.
foam
By
free,
itself or as a
even wire
base?
free.
Yeah.
Right, right. Because after they'll last, you've got the fresh colors in the beginning, and then they'll dry and they'll be, dark brown, but they will last for years and you can keep using them as bases. And then, yeah, compost pile or fire starter, or you're right.
I cut you off, but I think you said as an alternative to a metal base, it's a really sustainable option, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
And you can also, I've seen people take curly willow and ball it up and put it into a vase
Hmm.
as, mechanics for a floral arrangement. And
Yes.
I was just looking for new ideas recently, and I saw a beautiful bridal bouquet made by just sort of making a base of
Hmm.
curly willow and then, putting the flowers in like as an alternative to the egg,
Yeah.
or a bouquet holder. And
Yes. Something a
I
little
haven't
bit more
tried that
natural.
yet, but the willow was a feature and also the mechanics. So that was
I'm
cool.
working on our forecast for 2025. Our kind of we don't use the word trend, but that's basically what it is. And one of the insights is going to be we're calling it "Show Your Work," and it's kind of what we're seeing. Robin Ovney, my trend forecast partner, and I look at is the fact that we don't have to hide our mechanics. There's so many designers who are integrating branches and in some cases other more permanent things like metal wire, but something that will hold the flowers that you see and it becomes part of the
Mhm.
design. So you're right on brand with that. I love it. Okay, so Elena, you have to tell me how you found this path to Willow and how you and Michael became Willow farmers, because it's fascinating, and I think it'll spark others to just look at their options. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
No, well, we lived in South Louisiana, and about 15 years ago, Michael got a neurological disease that just ended his career on a dime, and we spent about a year or so recovering, but the he just couldn't tolerate the heat after that
Mm,
happened to him, and so we started looking for somewhere to maybe spend the summer that was cooler. And then just decided, "Ah, heck, let's just go." So,
wow.
wound up in Oregon, and we the property we were looking for a property that had a house large enough for we had 4 kids at home, big enough for all of us out in the country. Um, Not specifically here, but somewhere in Oregon. And this really, this property was just kind of the only option. But and we didn't know enough about the area to know how perfect it was with
Wow.
being this close to Eugene, but
Mm.
as far away as it is, tucked away. Um, so yeah, so we bought the property because we wanted to be out in the country and we needed a house that would hold 4 kids, and got the kids through school, renovated the house, and then when our last when we, I guess, became empty nesters,
Your last chick left the
turned
nest.
right, turned our focus in and started trying to figure out how we could make our living on the property, because, like I said, it's got trees, it's got meadow, it's got pasture and hayfield, and um it we couldn't do commercial farming or ranching. It's not large enough and didn't have the irrigation for that. But we just knew that it had potential and we could figure out a way to do it. But we weren't sure what that was. And one winter, Michael was messing around his duck pond and found some wild pussy willow already growing there,
Hmm.
and just brought a bunch of it to me because he knew I would love it. And it was just a light bulb moment. It was like, oh, and we have all that wet
Ah,
area, and
right.
willow likes water. Could we grow willow? And then what do you do with it? What do people use it for? Do people buy it? And started researching, and we were just absolutely hooked. We've always been interested in kind of old-fashioned things, and everyday items that are handmade, and made with real beautiful materials, and regenerative, responsible living. And I've always loved antiques. I've
Mm.
always loved gardening. It just kind of checked all the boxes.
Wow.
And I had breast cancer and spent about a year recovering from that, researching and thinking maybe I wanted to go into floral design,
Hmm.
and took several online courses and joined all the Facebook groups and read and read and read about, just what that life was really like. And it just didn't quite fit. Like, I loved flowers, but that just didn't quite fit. And I explored some other things. And I've just, in my old age, I've, I've kind of
Right.
developed a theory that even if you don't exactly know what you're going to do with something, if you just keep learning about things that interest you and trying things and doing things, even if you don't really know where it's going to lead, that eventually, hopefully, it will all gel, and everything will
Yeah.
you just keep gathering pieces, and one
Yeah.
day all those pieces will fall into place. And that's what happened with us in the Willow. It just,
Wow.
everything, all of the different things that we had done and explored and learned fell into place, and it all made
Mm.
sense, and we just love
Wow.
it.
Wow. When did you actually start the business? Because when you're talking about the fact that these willow plants really don't start producing for 3 years, you had kind of an on-ramp before you could sort of open the door and start marketing, right?
We did that winter. When we got interested in it, we immediately found a source and ordered some cuttings. We started with, I think, um, maybe 100 to 200 cuttings, and put them in a little small area just to sort of see how
Yeah.
they would do. If we were right, if it would be happy here, and it was.
Hmm.
So we did maybe 10 times that much the second year. Um, and then the it was, I believe it was our third year growing, we decided to sort of just do a test run selling the cuttings and get all of the pieces in place. I made the website, I figured out how to ship and the packaging and things, and it was just going to be just a little small trial run. And somehow Florette got wind of us and mentioned us on their Erin, on her Instagram page. And I woke up one morning and picked up my phone, and I'd gotten like 40 orders overnight, and I almost fell out of bed.
Wait, I don't have
Like,
I don't have the
wait,
daytime to do this.
I'm not sure I'm ready for this yet. So it was kind of trial by fire, but it was perfect. It was great. It was so much fun, and we're in our third year selling now.
Okay.
And and I completely built the whole thing on social media, which has been
Yeah.
great because before I ever sell to a lot of people, I've been having conversations with them on, on Instagram or on Facebook. So I feel like I'm talking to my friends already, and it just makes
Mm,
it's so much more personal than, otherwise. And
right.
I really enjoy that.
Well, it sounds like that you like that interaction because you're getting feedback then, and kind of it's almost like market research while you're having these DM
Yeah.
conversations on
Yeah.
Instagram. The other thing that came to mind listening to you was, a lot of people are experimenting with flower shipping, and it's got to be for a perishable product. It's got to be an overnight game, and that's very expensive. Even if you have a membership in Cal Flowers, where you're getting, the discount on the FedEx rate, but willows don't need to be overnighted, do they?
Right. They're very durable. They're
Yes.
very durable. We, I, in my climate, I could cut a bunch of curly willow or pussy willow and lay it on the ground and leave it there for a couple of months, and it would be fine.
It was
And
could still root, you mean?
oh yeah, oh yeah,
Wow, it's
absolutely. Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it would still root and it still looks good. I
Mhm,
could use it in an arrangement.
mhm.
2 months later, it still looks fine as long as it has that moisture. It doesn't have to be in water
Just out of
necessarily.
from the air or the ground.
Right, in my climate, because it's
Yeah.
so humid,
Mhm.
and and wet here all through the winter. It doesn't dry out really at all. Um, People in other climates probably should keep it in a bucket of water,
Right,
but no, I can cut it and ship it, and if it gets there in a week, you could give it a fresh cut, put it in a bucket of water, and it'll be fine for a
right.
good long time. And then
Wow.
when it does start to, it's kind of interesting, with the pussy willow especially. If you keep it in water, it will continue to cycle through. Like the winter glory has these beautiful red hulls, shiny red hulls before the catkins burst. And I love those in Christmas arrangements. They're so pretty. But if you keep it in water, it will continue to cycle, and you'll still get the silver catkin eventually, that will bloom
Wow.
inside in water.
Right.
If you want to keep the red buds, then just don't put it in water, and it'll dry with the red bud, and they'll darken. They're not going to stay the bright, vibrant red,
Mhm.
but it makes a great dried element.
Wow. That's
And
amazing.
conversely, if you don't want it to cycle, because after you get the pretty silver catkin, it keeps going, and then you get a burst of pollen, and then it's just a huge mess, which is great for. It's another thing willow is good for. It's a source of pollen early in the spring when there's not a lot. So willow is also great for bees.
Wow.
But pro tip, if you don't want pollen all over your house, when you start seeing those yellow bits come out of your catkins, it's time to take it out of the water and
Put it in the compost heap.
right.
Or do you sell at all to florists in the Eugene area, or, people who want tall, long, bunches of, 5-foot willow for installations or that sort of thing?
I have not.
Okay.
I haven't tried.
Yeah. It's just
We
not your niche.
I'm still exploring lots of things, and
Mm,
I really haven't ruled anything
mhm,
out. There are just things that I haven't gotten to. Well, last year we had actually agreed, well, not contracted with,
mhm.
but had talked to an upscale grocery chain in the Oregon area, and had planned to supply them with um, not the really tall ones, but pussy willow stems just for their floral
Yeah,
department.
like 24 inches or something like that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And they were really interested, and we were planning to do that. And then we sold so much of it um, for the cuttings that we just didn't have enough
Sure.
left to do that. So I do think that we have a lot more pussy willow blooming this year. So I do think that we're going to do that this year. And I've shipped a little bit on request. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have that as an option on the
Mm-hmm.
website, but I
Right.
do a lot of things that people email me and ask me for. And if we can figure it out and I can get it there, then yeah, we'll do it.
Wow.
So
You're very hands-on in terms of running the shop. I mean, Michael's the grower and you're the face of Willamette Willows, right?
yes, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah.
I look at over your left shoulder, I'm seeing just a little bit of pussy willow in behind you. Oh, how pretty. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
that's from
Um,
last year. That's dried from last year. And actually,
wow.
so is the curly over here.
So those catkins haven't produced pollen and become messy then. They're just
But
behaving.
because they were not in water.
Got it. Oh,
I either had them in water for a while and then took them out, or harvested them at that stage and just never put them in water.
well, I'm really involved in the Northwest Flower and Garden Festival in Seattle, which you met my friend Lamanda, who's the seminar manager.
Uh-huh.
It's at the end of February, and in every year there's something that the consumer goes crazy over, and often it's big bunches of pussy willow that people are
Yeah.
carrying out of the show. So some vendors up here selling it, and it's
Uh-huh.
a time of year when not a lot is in bloom unless it's been
Right.
grown in a greenhouse. So it is that sort of promise of spring that I think is, it's romantic, and people
Hmm.
love the idea of putting it in a basket or a tall cylinder or something and putting it by the fireplace. I just seeing it next to you, I think, oh yeah, I've got to get some tall pussy willow for winter because this is the time of year to start incorporating it into your designs.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a great standalone too.
Yeah,
No, and it is sentimental. People frequently tell me, "Oh, my grandmother had one in her garden or in her yard," and I remember that from playing with the catkins when I was a kid.
right, right.
It's something that people remember. But yeah, it is great all by itself, and then also incorporated. But this is probably, I think that's Winter Glory. Winter Glory gets we have winter glory that's 9 feet tall this
Wow,
year. And yeah, I think it would be fabulous as it's an
a spray.
installation for a winter or an
Yeah.
early spring wedding.
Elena, it's a little early in this because we're talking on November 26th. It's a little early for Pussy Willow now. You're harvesting it later in the like January or February, or is are the catkins starting to form right now on your plants?
There there are a few. It's a little early for
Okay.
it.
But
It was
not too long.
no, not too long, not too long. We have, like I said, we have the red hulls on the winter glory are pretty dependable for Christmas time.
Okay.
And then right around Christmas time, around the first of the year, the hulls are falling off and the fuzzy catkins are emerging. But it varies a little bit. We had a weird, and I've heard a lot of people say we had a weird summer here, and I'm not sure what it was, but we do have some catkins a little earlier than
Mm.
normal this
Hmm.
year.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, good thing you live there. You can check them every day, right?
right.
Well, this has been so much fun. And Elena and Michael are going to film a little video tour that we're going to add to the end of this interview just to give people an introduction to what they're growing and what the mature plants look like and, just how their field looks. And I appreciate that. And you shared a lot of photos. So people need to come over to slowflowerspodcast.com for this episode and check out the show notes. There'll be a lot of resources on Willamette Willows, but also some photos. And before we wrap up, I want to just make sure I didn't. There's just something we were going to talk about that I skipped asking you about, Elena, that you want to make sure people know about.
Oh my goodness. I think we covered a lot of ground.
We did. We did. That's great. It's the time of year to have willow on your mind. I guess the one thing I want to wrap up asking you about is why aren't more flower farmers growing willow as a crop? Do you think that this is just sort of coming into its own and people have overlooked the versatility of this amazing plant?
I am really not sure. I think that's a great question. One of the things that there are not very many suppliers of willow cuttings in the US. There are a few, but
Hmm.
the ones that do exist are mostly catering to people who are growing willow for basketry. And I just haven't found much focus on it. And I don't know if I would have known if I hadn't had that interest in floral design and gardening
Right.
already, if I would have thought to market it to or make it available to flower farmers. And I'm not really sure because everybody seems to love it. It's just kind of something that they haven't thought of.
I love that. And I love the idea that you're kind of thinking about the end use and the end purpose for both the grower and the florist and their consumer. So
Yeah.
just the varieties that you have blow my mind. And that's exciting too. It's not
Mhm.
just a common general, a widely available variety. You're going after the specialty varieties, which again, our industry loves. And I just want to encourage people to check it out. Uh, we'll have the website and all the places you can find and follow Willamette Willows in our show notes. And thank you so much, Elena. It's been really great to get to know you and talk about this, just a topic I love and I'm excited to share widely with the community.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you helping me get the word out
Oh,
because
you bet.
it is a great product. It's I think if there was anything else wanted to mention is just that it requires almost no work in the summertime at all. So it's just something that can give you a profitable product in the wintertime with almost no maintenance. So why not?
That is that's a great selling point right there. Got to sustain the off season and then go on vacation in the summer months.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It's hard enough in the summertime. It's hard
Thank
enough.
you so much. We'll talk soon. And thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thank
Bye
you,
bye.
Deborah. Bye. Hi. We're going to give you a little tour of our willows. This is a good place to start because we have a lot of our floral willows here. This is one of my favorites, Winter Glory, that you've probably heard me talk about a lot because I love these red buds that come out before the catkins and usually in time for Christmas decorating. This is Mount Osso. This is the pink pussy willow that everybody loves so much. These plants are 2 years old, and Michael has got about 400 planted in these 2 rows here. And they are about 12 inches on center, which it's a little close, but they're just fine with it. And we're planted for space here. So if you were doing it's hard to tell when the leaves are off, but if you wanted to plant them out also for a hedge, you would probably space them more like 18 to 24 inches apart because they are very full when they're in leaf. And if you follow me down here, go look at the second. This is Seca, this is fantail willow, and it's fasciated. And about 20% of the stems of Seca will do this. And it's just really kind of sculptural. And all of these little bumps here, those will all form catkins. So Seca is a pussy willow, but it's got that fasciation. And over here is one of our new offerings for this year. This is really red curly willow, and the other, the scarlet curls and the sunny twist are both kind of an orangey red. But these, even though the main trunk of the really red still has that orangey cast, most of the stems that you would be using in arrangements really are a true red. And so I love these for Christmas. Kind of a Christmas color instead of a orangey red fall color. These are rabbit's foot. They look a lot like winter glory. They've got the early red buds also. But the catkins on these actually look like a little rabbit foot. They have a really distinct shape. And these are also beautiful and huge. These and the winter glory, I think, would just make an amazing dramatic installation for like a winter wedding or something. Love these. This is Salix discolor, another one of our new varieties. Has a really distinctive black hull over the catkins. Starts out kind of red and yellow, like they sort of look like candy corn in the fall. And then the hulls turn black, and then the catkins are white. It's a kind of a go-to all-purpose pussy willow. And these are some of our basketry willows. This is cardinalis. Love these for fall colors. Great landscape plant. Deer don't like them. Green dick, golden red. This is another great landscape willow, and a good one for living fences and huts. It's got a really pretty fall color, and another one that the deer don't like. Which you can see why with the yellow in the middle, and then they'll change into orange and red when the leaves are still on and the wind is blowing and these are moving around and the sun's shining on them. It really does look like a fire. And this is rubicans. This is another nice landscape willow. The leaves are tinged pink when they come out in the spring, and it's also a pussy willow. This one has a little tiny catkins because it's kind of a wilder look, more subtle than the other pussy willows, but it's nice and tall. This one is good for living fences, although the deer do like this one. This is blue streak. It's really distinctive because of this white bloom on it, and it's also a pussy willow. Kind of like rubicans, has a smaller, wilder looking, subtle catkin. It's really beautiful. But blue streak is kind of a diva and does not grow prolifically. Needs a little more space, needs sun, needs fertilizer. We think it's worth it, but it's definitely an accent willow. It's not going to be a mainstay. This is Sunny Twist, another one of the curlies, with the more orangey red, fallish color. Again, these were coppiced almost to the ground, and all of this is 1 year's worth of growth. And these are gorgeous in the landscape. They're good for florals. They're beautiful in the landscape. If you want multi-purpose, something that looks pretty all year round, and then you can use it. This is a great one for that. And over on this side is dark snake. And this is a green to olive brown curly willow. And I like this one for a more neutral accent. And again, all 1 year's worth of growth. They're kind of more squiggly than curly. How tall do you think this is, Michael?
That's about 12 feet.
about 12 feet.
Yeah.
That's all in 1 year. You can really see down. These are some of our oldest plants. And this trunk is pretty impressive. So that's both of these. I can't even get my hand around that anymore. The willows will, they definitely need to be coppiced every year if you are not trying to grow a tree. Because they're vigorous. And if you want a shrub, you need to keep them cut down. So it's a little bit early, and we're actually going to wait another couple of weeks before we start harvesting. But this is how you should harvest your willow. You want to go all the way down, almost to the trunk. Just leave a bud, 1 or 2 buds that you can see there. Oh, the scrawny ones. Let's just take all the way down. Just like that. Well, that's all there is to it. And then if you have any of these little, Michael calls them robbers, cut those completely off, because those just sap energy and aren't really going to give you anything that's worth anything. So, and this is also a great time. We're planted in fabric because they're just absolutely too much competition. And just make sure that your hole is not choking your willow. Open that up a little bit, because your trunk will be larger next year. So you don't want, you don't want your fabric choking and girdling your willow. So I'm going to propagate the willow that you've cut. These are the Mount Ossos that I just cut. Pointed end, anywhere from 10 to however long you want. The drier your ground, the longer the cutting is good if you have the material. Just gives more space area for roots. Make a hole, poke it in there. And we usually use a large screwdriver or a piece of rebar to make pilot holes. But my ground is already wet enough that it can go in. That's all there is to it. That will grow. This is Lemoyne improved. We like to have a lot of different varieties of pussy willow because the catkin bloom time is staggered, and so you always have product available when you have different varieties, and then they all have slightly different looks. This Lemoyne improved, it's like a thick, robust rod, and look how many catkins are on there. They're just chock-a-block. These are gorgeous. I think, we have ideal growing condition for willow here, so we're kind of learning that we need to figure out how to make them not quite so happy, because some of them are just huge. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you, Deborah. I hope this has been helpful. We are always happy and available to answer questions. So thanks a lot.